So welcome again to the board meeting of the Ross Valley Sanitary District Board of Directors. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and I'd like a roll call. Julia, please.
Oh, are we starting over?
We are.
Okay.
Okay, Borstein.
Oh, well, this is good to know.
Hang on, I'm helping.
Okay.
Give me 1 second. I got Tom on the other line and we're getting him in.
Well, you can say here.
I'm here.
Gaffney will be here shortly. Kelly.
Here.
Megs.
Here.
Scylla.
Here.
Wait 1 second for Gaffney. He's almost there. Go ahead, Mary. I'm going to mute. Do the pledge.
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'd like to have a motion to approve the agenda, moving items 15 and 18 to follow item 6.
And well, actually, you could have items 5 and 6 moved to the end of the agenda.
Okay.
If you like.
Okay, we'll move items 5 and 6 to follow 20. And so then our next item after agenda and open time would be 15 and 18. So
Yes.
Do I have a motion for that agenda?
Yes, I move to approve the agenda as rearranged.
Second.
Okay, Doug and Pam, roll call vote, please, Julia.
Michael. Borstein. Okay. Visual eye vote. Gaffney is currently absent. Kelly.
Yes.
Megs.
Yes.
Scylla.
Yes.
4-1. Thank you. 4-0.
Open time for public to raise items not on the agenda or for future agenda items. Do we have any public who would like to address the board at this time?
Okay, good. Thank you, Michael. Yeah.
Now we have Tom. Hearing and seeing no public, we'll move on to agenda item number 15, consideration of adopting resolution 2015-92, adopting and implementing the Uniform Public Construction Cost Accounting Act. Steve and team.
Yes, thank you very much.
Oh, there you are.
Yes, I'm here. Yeah, and then also I want to introduce staff new engineer, Phil Benedetti, joining us, came from the city of Petaluma. Let me just briefly introduce the item and then have Phil explain some of the reasons for doing this. What we find as a mid-sized district is we often, and with a lot of private property and coordination with 5 different municipal jurisdictions, we often have to move fairly quickly and nimbly on mid-sized construction projects to make our system upgrades fit with all these other moving parts. You've had a couple of examples of that over the last year since I've joined you. And we have 2 items on this agenda today that have that flavor. And we do declare emergencies to get work done on a quick time scale. But this is a well-used, well-understood method. By electing to comply with this act, the UPCCAA, we are given the ability to use an informal bidding process under the Public Contract Code to do projects between $60,000 and $200,000 on an informal basis instead of going out to formal public bidding. And so there's advantages to doing this, but we do have to pass an ordinance that gives us the authority to implement our mid-sized construction projects in this fashion. And with that, Phil, do you have any other remarks you'd like to pass along to the board?
Yes, yeah, thanks, Steve. By adopting the UPCCAA UPCA, it will help streamline a lot of district projects, as Steve's describing, where we need to sort of thread the needle or work ourselves into the fabric of all these public projects going on, as well as private construction projects where we get an opportunity to perform some sort of critical maintenance item with short notice, and it allows us to act quickly, but still in a responsible way in terms of bidding through these informal procedures. By adopting the act, we agree to the ability to have the ability to account for staff time should we if there were a situation where the lowest bid was rejected because we wanted to have district staff complete a project, for example, we would need to be able to account for that time to show that it was less than that amount. But beyond that, it allows us to really streamline what was originally in public contract code is a limit of $15,000. This increases that limit up to $60,000, and then projects up, it allows us to informally bid up to $200,000, which allows for a much wider range of projects, and especially what the district is. Most of our projects, it would be hard to fit in to that without adopting UPCA. So.
Thank you. Yes, and we still are bound by the district's financial policies. So you won't see any expenditures above 50,000 being approved administratively. Anything with $50,000 and above must come to the board. And we have our own procedures about having 3 bids or seeking 3 informal bids. So all those financial policies still apply. But this gives us a waiver of sorts to a strict adherence to the public contract code. And we are not alone. City of Larkspur uses this. Novato Sanitary District uses this. And there are many others. And so we're just using an available tool that's been approved through state legislation quite some time ago. I forget what year it was originally adopted. So we see this as a great fit for our district and recommend adoption.
Thank you. We reviewed this at the Finance Committee meeting, so I feel like I've already processed what it means. Do board members have questions about this? Yes, Pam.
Is this a federal act or is this a state act? What kind of act is this?
It is a state. It is a state act, and it's the commission that administers this act is California based, and it's the California. I'm not even going to try and remember the full mnemonic, but it's CUPCA, I believe, CUPCAP, I think. But it's a committee it's California.
Cupcake.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, 1983 was the date I was trying to remember. It's in the staff report.
Any other questions from the board? Yes, Tom.
Why this is important is that $15,000 was probably set up a long time ago, and we have an agenda item here. It's I think it's 80 feet of pipe, and it's going to cost $41,000. So $15,000. I don't even know if we have any projects that are $15,000. Maybe a manhole. I'm not sure. So that $15,000 is the number that's really old. And I think this is, for example, we're taking competitive bids on these emergency projects, and that seems to work pretty well. We're getting bids. So, I'm in favor of this. I think it streamlines, it saves staff a lot of time, and I don't think it'll cost us any money. I think contractors like to bid on these informal things. They're limited to just 3 or 4 or 5, and they got a pretty good shot at it, and it's informal, and so, you know, I think it might help us.
All right. Any members of the public wish to comment on this item? Then I'd look for a motion.
I move to approve the resolution implementing the Uniform Public Construction Cost Accounting Act and direct staff to file the resolution with the State Controller's Office and Act Ordinance number 110, adopting the informal bidding procedures.
Well, second.
Thank you. Julia, roll call?
Yes, Borstein,
Yes.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Meigs,
Yes.
Priscilla,
Yes.
unanimous vote. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now we'll move on to item number 18, consideration of adopting resolution 2015-93 to declare an emergency for Ballinas Avenue 8.5-inch sanitary sewer repair. Steve.
Great. This does relate a little bit to the previous item, but the ordinance is not in effect yet. So there is an emergency repair we do need to conduct. There was a live sanitary sewer that was severed accidentally as part of a town storm drain project. And we discovered it through routine line maintenance, and there was no sewer overflow. We're maintaining the system, but we need to reinstate this sewer. And there's currently a paving project going on by the town of San Anselmo. And so we have a narrow window to get this sewer repair fixed. And so we recommend declaring this emergency situation. We did solicit informal bids. It's in the staff report. We only received 2 responses, and the low bid is $61,300. So we do recommend awarding a contract in that amount to fix this sewer. It's an 80-foot sewer. To give you context, on the high end for a larger project, you can assume maybe $500 a foot for an open cut project, just a straightforward open cut sewer project of this nature. So if you do the quick math, it's 80 feet times 500 is 40,000. So that's your rule of thumb number for a one and done postage stamp type sewer project. But this one has special items. We have to get under the storm drain. We have to lower the connection in the downstream manhole. And we have to do a tie-in to the existing sewer. So these extra work items, and it's also at some depth. So that makes the $61,000 number reasonable. So we do recommend that we go forward with it. And those are some of the details. I have Phil join us because he worked on, he actually created a drawing. He did some field work to verify elevations and confirm there was a conflict with the new storm drain. So he has some insight into the nature of the work. Is there anything maybe I overlooked in my summary, Phil, that you'd like to add?
No, I think that covered it pretty well.
I will say we're doing our maintenance is starting to add up on this. We have a smart cover in place, and we pump down that upstream manhole. So this, our whole agency has been trying to manage the situation, and it's good news that we were able to get a reasonable price to have this repair done in this timely manner. And thanks to Phil for really rising to the occasion to get things done in a timely manner.
Yes, Doug.
Who cut the pipe, and aren't they liable for some repayment to us?
Well, it's a reasonable question. There was miscommunication by our agency to the municipalities that worked on this project. They were led to believe or misunderstood that pipe was an abandoned pipe. And so the contractor for the town at Ross and the town in San Anselmo, working jointly, cut this pipe and ran the storm drain through there, but they were under the impression it was abandoned pipe.
All right, any other questions from the board?
Quick question, is no insurance to help out with that at all on either side?
I don't believe so. This is an emergency repair, and I'm not aware of an insurance option.
Speaking as the district's risk manager, I appreciate the question, and I can follow up with our insurance pool, CSRMA. It is considered a property damage, so it's worth asking the question. Thank you.
Good,
Alicia?
great. All right, any members of the public wish to comment on this item? Hearing none, I would ask for a motion.
Okay, I'll move to adopt resolution number 20-1593 to declare an emergency for Ballinas Avenue 8-inch sanitary sewer repair in San Anselmo and authorize the general manager upon review and approval of district council to contract with Majoria and Gelati to repair the sewer in the amount of $61,300.
I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call, please, Julia.
Yes, Borstein,
Yes.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Meigs,
Yes.
Zilla,
Yes.
unanimous vote. Thank you.
So now we head back to agenda item number 7, committees report out. HR committee, the HR committee did meet, correct? Yes, Doug and, I'm sorry, Doug, are you going to report for that?
I don't care. Michael, you want to do it or you want not? I'm ready.
Looks like he's saying go ahead.
It's one of the items that's on our agenda tonight. It's a consideration of adopting an administrative policy change during these challenging times. And Doug and I discussed it at some length with staff, and we both agreed it's an appropriate thing to do. And so when we get to 17, we're going to discuss it, but we examined it at some length.
Thank you. Finance committee, Tom, do you want to report on what we did?
Yeah, I'll do that. The Finance Committee reviews all the financial items on the consent calendar. And so we go into those in some detail. If we had any questions, we'd get back to the board. We had a good discussion on the item 11, which is leasing instead of buying. And Steve Miskus explained a lot of the advantages of doing a leasing program instead of buying this equipment. Generally, it lasts for 4 years, and then you get a refund on it. And so this is a kind of a trial lease program on just one of our trucks, and we're going to see how well it works out. That seems like a good idea. We had a long presentation from Century Urban, the real estate company, and they're going to make a presentation tonight. They told us that for the Finance Committee, it concentrated on financial alternatives, which they'll go into a little bit, I guess, tonight. But whatever that was. You know, we went into them in some detail on possible alternatives for financing. We also reviewed, well, the uniform construction cost accounting code and the emergency project items. Did you have anything else, Mary?
No, I think we reviewed a lot of the things we'll talk about on the agenda tonight. So I think that's sufficient. Was there an ad hoc facilities committee meeting this month? No, okay. And was there a CMSA meeting this month? No, I see shaking heads. Okay, great. All right, on to agenda item 8, verbal report by general manager. Steve.
Thank you, President Zilla. I don't have a whole lot to report on. We want to get on with the agenda. We have our guests here. I wanted to note I was requested by the parties that actually made an offer on our 2960 Kerner building. We received an offer for purchase and in around the March time period, and I did communicate it with the president at that time, President Borstein, as well as Andrea, that the Ritter Center offered to purchase Kerner Boulevard for $2.4 million. And so we did respond at the time. It was right about the time COVID started, around mid-March. And so we were still figuring out at the time, and we since determined that we really need the Kerner building for the foreseeable future to manage social distancing and safe workplace for our employees. So we let them know, thank you for the offer. We also let them know that there's a public process we have to follow for disposal of surplus property. But right now it's not surplus property and it's not for sale. So they asked that I make the board aware of that offer that was made. The Ritter Center provides mental health services for folks, transient folks, homeless folks in downtown San Rafael. And I sent an email last week. I've been participating in the Bay Area One Water Network, and there was a publication that I was part of the team in formulating. So I emailed a copy of that report last week, and hope you found that interesting about water recycling and the need to approach it from a regional standpoint, as is done in Southern California. The Bay Area has been not as unified, and that's starting to change. And so our perspective as a collection system that uses recycled water has been a valuable addition to that dialogue. The infrastructure asset management plan continues. We appreciate the board's support of that effort to systematically review our capital improvement program based on risk going forward, and going forward toward a pay-as-you-go model. And now that we have incurred some debt, we're trying to structure things in a way that won't incur more debt and have it based on risk. And so some good news that we received this week on the infiltration and inflow analysis is that indeed your investments are making a quantitative difference in terms of I&I reduction as measured by flow monitoring, and not just at the headworks of CMSA. So it's great to see this, that even when groundwater table levels rise, we're still seeing a reduction in flow in specific areas measuring now compared to the past. So I thought I'd share that good news that your commitment and support of this capital work is making a measurable difference. And that will be reflected in our IMP report, and it will help guide priorities for capital improvements going forward. Finally, I would be remiss not to let you know that at Larkspur Landing cleanup, it's practically cleaned up. I showed you a picture earlier, and I can share a screen later, but that was a picture of how it looks now, which is it's all backfilled. We're now putting topsoil on today. And we have some remaining management of some lightly contaminated soils and some of the concrete rubble that still needs to be off-hauled. But all the digging and the filling is done. So I thought that was worth reporting at this board meeting on August 19th. And that's it for my general manager's report. Thank you.
Thank you. Doug, yes.
I have 2 questions. First off, I'm glad to hear about Larkspur Landing. That's great news, Steve. Just as a point of reference, does anybody remember what we paid for Kerner?
Pam does.
I want to say we bought it, then we refied it. I want to say 4 million for some reason. Maybe, I don't know, maybe that was the cost after we paid off one loan, and I just want to say 4 million, but I'm not sure.
Looks like Felicia knows. No? Oh, she doesn't know. Okay.
You don't know?
I don't know off the top of my head, but Director Meggs may be correct that considering the financing that the district undertook after the purchase, that there was an increased cost based on the financing.
Right.
But I would suspect that the cost, the actual purchase price of the building was considerably less. I can look it up and get back to the board.
If you could at some point, it's not a hurry, but I'd be interested to see as a point of reference where we got an unsolicited offer of 2.4. Where are we in the marketplace? And then just briefly, Steve, at some point, if we could get somewhere in the consent calendar or in the metrics at the end, the numbers you were referencing on inflow and infiltration, I'd be interested in seeing the results of the work we've been doing. That'd be great. It interests me. Obviously, we should have a lot less inflow at CMSA. That's down to 44% of their inflow as opposed to 50, and that's good. But whatever metrics you have would be interesting at some point.
Yeah, well, and that's kind of the punchline is really what goes into CMSA, and that's valid information, as good as a guidepost as any. But the other things that we're collecting reinforce that that ongoing result at the headworks of CMSA.
All right, thank you. Verbal report by board members and requests for future items. Pamela.
Can we, I don't know if this is a board item or not, but it might be. I did not know we are not recording special meetings. And I learned that after last month that you have to request them prior, which I find kind of odd. And then I'm wondering about the public, if they want it requested, because there's no audio, there's no video. And so we have action minutes that are short and brief. So I'm just wondering, is there, for me, I'm not going to remember all these policies. I'm going to be 70 soon. I just cannot keep, I didn't even know this happened. And Julia said it happened 2 years ago. So I'm just wondering, is there an easier way that we can just, I don't know, maybe Andrea, you have some ideas. You and I think, did I talk to you about it maybe?
Well, my understanding is that special meetings often are just closed sessions, so that there wouldn't be a lot of reason to have an audio or video recording. But since it's so easy to video record while we're on GoToMeeting, I think it's fine to move to recording everything. That's what I recall from the emails that went back and forth about this. Andrea, do you have something else?
No, I don't disagree with that. It's really up to the board and the agency as to, whether you want to record them. I don't see any problem either way.
Okay. So I think I don't know that there was an official policy. I just think it became a practice, but mostly because special meetings, often required simply an opening, and then it would have been unrecordable anyway as a closed session. Julia, is that correct?
That is correct. So as you said, most special meetings are closed session only. And so if we would like to record all meetings, regular and special in the future, I would just ask that the board waits for me to join the new open session once we reconvene, so I can press record for the couple of minutes to report and then adjourn the meeting.
Okay. And I mean, I would say if we had a meeting that was simply a closed session with formal opening and closing, that there would be no reason to record it. I mean, but anyway.
Yes.
We certainly wouldn't want to record dead airspace or something. I don't know how that would work. So thank you. Any other verbal reports by board members or requests for future items? Okay, then we'll move on to the consent calendar.
Just quickly, some of us went to the conference, and I'm not going to report out now, but I'm wondering if there's a couple of things that I may want to share at another board meeting that might take 3 to 5 minutes. The sewer surveillance was fascinating. It's testing for COVID in the outflow, I believe. And then this other thing, the microplastics, was just fascinating research. So I just wanted to say if we could work out, maybe do a little educational thing, maybe for the community as well. Anyway, that's it.
Which conference was that, just for clarification?
The CASA one, we did it remotely. It was good.
Okay, thanks. Moving on to the consent calendar. Anybody have anything they want to pull, or are we able to move through this? Okay, yes, Pam?
Sorry, I'm probably annoying everybody. I want to pull 10B, and I want to pull 10E. E is an A.
Okay. Anybody else have any?
I have a comment, a correction on 10A.
Say that again, Tom.
Correction on 10A.
Correction on 10A. And then Doug, did you want to say something?
I want to pull 10E as well. I just want a little further clarification of that. Just have the general manager report out.
So let's start at 10A. What's the correction, Tom?
On page 11 of 184, down there under item number 12, the right at the end, I got promoted, I think.
Oh, President Gaffney.
Yeah, those two.
We're not the president.
Sorry about that. I will change it before posting it to the website. Sorry about that.
That's all.
Thank you for your close reading, Tom. Okay, Pam, what would you like to ask about 10B?
The minutes for item 8 on page 18 of 184. My statement was very brief here, and I feel I said quite a bit more, and I just will not support the minutes. There's no way I can recall everything, but I know I talked quite a long time, and I can't, there's no audio, there's no visual, so I'm just not going to support the minutes from my statement.
Okay, we'll pull those minutes out. These are, what's the term? These are not meant to meant to represent a transcript of the meeting, but only intended to be a summary. So that's something that happens sometimes. And 10E, Pam and Doug, in that order, what do you want to say about 10E?
It's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money.
I understand these are being replaced. They're 8 years old or something. Can you lease these things, like the automobiles? I mean, this a ton of.
I asked that question kind of as a joke because no, enterprise rent-a-car does not have this kind of specialized equipment, unfortunately.
I was just surprised to see this much money in a consent item too, but that's all I have, Doug. You're on.
Be more than happy to explain, Director Meggs. The only ability we have with a Vector, it's a specialized cleaning equipment. We can rent it, and for a rental unit, it costs anywhere from $10,000 to $14,000 a month. So it's far better to buy these things. One of those large vacuum machines, just one of them, Director Meggs, is anywhere from $500,000 to $800,000. We're not buying a vacuum system. We're buying an actual, just a jet truck, because we have mostly small diameter pipe, and we have a VACON that was just fixed. So we do have a vacuum machine. These pieces of equipment are extremely expensive and specialized, but Vector is they're very tough pieces of equipment.
Thank you. It's very helpful.
Doug, what were your questions about the 10E?
No, that's all. I just wanted some explanation as to the costs. It's a large amount of money, and so I think on the consent calendar, it just earns a little bit more of a conversation than that. Do we have any of the? How many of these? Do we have any of these already? Are they replacing any?
They're replacing 2 lower down in the staff report. They're becoming very unreliant. They're constantly at Diego's. I think one was 80,000 over 3 years. The other one was around 60,000. But what really affects the district is the downtime and not having the truck available for production. And we have to go borrow a truck from another crew. And then during COVID, you really want to have good working machinery so you don't have to transfer and drive and come and get other pieces of equipment. So there's a lot of downtime, especially on JTO2. But the amount of footage each of them has gotten, just to point out, a contractor usually charges 90 cents to $1.50 to clean 1 foot of pipe. So they've definitely earned their keep.
2 quick questions that follow up to your comments, Stephen. How old are the machines, the vans we're replacing?
The Rams, I think, were purchased, they're 2012s, but we purchased them in 2011.
Okay.
And we do have all the metrics on them through our Geotab GPS and our fleet management software.
Is there any value to those?
Yes, that's why we're going to hold on to them. Generally, due to the specialized equipment, we want to cannibalize anything that were to break, or if something had to go in, we'd have an immediate used truck, but we don't want to put a lot of engine hours on that, the old vehicles, just to keep the repair costs down. And eventually, yes, we do want to auction them off.
The cost of these machines is included in our annual budget too.
Yes.
Yep, and we did get some discount. We tried to lay that out in the staff report that, the maintenance costs that we're starting to accrue, the downtime, which is hard to monetize, but affects our productivity, and our effect and our efficiency of staff, and then as well as we got the discount from the list price by getting 2. We bought 2 before. That was another question at Finance Committee. Is there wisdom in staggering this expense? But we're replacing 2 that were bought about 8 years ago, and that's about the useful life of this heavily impacted equipment. But
Right.
it's vital. It's something that the staff have been requesting management to address. I think.
Yeah.
As this type of heavy duty equipment ages, there becomes an increased anxiety about safety that goes with it as well. And that's what we were hearing from staff.
All right, any other questions? Anything from the public on the consent calendar? Then I suggest we vote on 10A, C, D, E, F, and then on 10B separately. Is that appropriate, Andrea?
Sure.
I would move to approve the consent calendar A, C, D, E, and F.
Thank you, Doug. Doug and Michael. Julia, roll call, please.
Yeah, thank you, Borski,
Yes.
Gaffney,
Yes,
Kelly,
Yes.
Meggs. Director Meggs, you're on mute.
Yes.
Thank you. Philip,
Yes.
unanimous vote, thank you.
All right, and then consent calendar item 10B, motion to approve.
I move approval.
Thank you, Tom.
Second.
Michael seconds. Roll call, please, Julia.
Borstein,
Yeah.
Gaffney,
Yes,
Kelly. Director Kelly, was that a yes? You're on mute.
Yes.
Thank you. Meggs?
I just want to make it's item 8 that we're voting on, not the whole, not all the, just so you know, because it's not the whole entire 10B. Anyway, I'm voting no.
Okay, Scylla,
Yes.
4-1 vote, thank you.
Thank you. All right, agenda item 11, consideration of authorizing the general manager upon review and approval of council to approve a lease agreement with Enterprise Fleet Management. Steve and Steve.
Great, thank you, President Silla. And we do have a guest on this item. I thought I'd say Mikhail Reyes from Enterprise. And not unlike a decision you made about a year ago, or so on servers, you contemplate the idea of do we purchase servers and computers or do we lease them? And this idea that, you know, they become depreciated pretty quickly. Well, when it comes to our non-specialized vehicles, pickup trucks, you know, vans, those sorts of things, we experience a similar level of depreciation of those assets, and then they become even, you know, liabilities or something we have to deal with as surplus property, much like the computers. And so Stephen Mixis was talking to Enterprise, with Mikhail's from Enterprise, about whether we purchase or lease. And so he's proposing a pilot to lease a new vehicle as opposed to purchase it, because it was something like a 2003 Chevy Astro that has reached the end of its useful life. But we need the functionality of that vehicle. And so the proposal is to lease instead of buy. And in the staff report, he laid out the trade-offs and how we save money. But there's also other benefits. Anything you'd like to add there, Stephen?
Very well put, Steve. Yes, we've been talking to Enterprise for a couple of years. We generally had a brand new fleet, but as the fleet ages for the non-specialized vehicles, they came in and did an analysis for 17 of our vehicles. And the cost savings at the time was estimated to be a couple $100,000 over the course of 10 years. So we felt that, hey, let's you know, entertain this idea. I met with Mikhail several times with my maintenance supervisor. We laid out, we have a 2003 Chevy Astra that has multiple problems for it. The cost of the repairs is actually worth more than the Blue Book value of the vehicle. So we needed to replace it. It's key to our QA/QC with the push camera for line maintenance to make sure we're cleaning lines properly. And we also use it for our acoustic device for the SL RAT, which helps us do condition assessment and make sure there's no blockages or partial blockages in the lines. So it is a very important vehicle. And there's a lot more benefits to using Enterprise, such as they take care of all the titles, registration, drop off. They put in all the safety systems, all the lighting. They even put on the logo. So it takes staff a lot of time when we get a new vehicle, but basically they hand us off a key and we hit the ground running with all the laptop chargers and everything installed. So there's a cost benefit after the 4 years that you always have a highly reliable fleet, and first responders, obviously we need that. And with that, I'll answer any questions. When Mikhail can
Is this a lease to own?
What's that?
Is this a lease to own?
There is an option, but in the staff report, I think generally, Mikhail, what was the option that most people took?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. The one thing just to point out, as Steve had mentioned it early on, the actual estimated savings, if we were to assist with the entire non-specialized vehicles, was actually $311,000 through the course of 10 years. So probably good to voice that now. Second to that, to answer the question, is lease to own is an option. What most of our government partners do is actually lease and sell at term, utilize the return on equity to continue to facilitate this program moving forward. So to Steve's point, you're essentially keeping fleet dollars in fleet dollars to maintain controlled operational expenses, but also maintain updated safety features as technology evolves.
Yeah, I think the point is we don't want to own it, right? We want to,
And again, it's a great program. North Marin Water's using it. Mikhail's got several other entities. I'm actually talking to a couple other local districts that are interested in how our pilot project works out, because I'm going to show Steve and Felicia obviously the full analysis, but $311,000, that's some serious savings over the course of 10 years.
Yeah, and to President Silla's point, that's right. These vehicles start to become more of a liability than an asset as time goes by, and the depreciation is pretty quick, you know. And so the idea of having a refreshed fleet with all the latest safety features And, you know, maybe electric comes into play, maybe self-driving, who knows, right, in 4 years, right? So why be locked into a 2020 fleet when things change so quickly?
Yep.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Any other questions from the board? Any questions from the public? We discussed this at the finance committee and it seems like a great idea. This is a pilot project, this may have been said, pilot project that may be expanded. Okay, hearing nothing more, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we authorize the general manager upon review and approval of council to approve a lease agreement with Enterprise Fleet Management for a 2020 Ram ProMaster 1500 van for the amount of $32,442.76 over 48 months.
Second?
I'll second.
Julia,
Okay. Yes, Borstein,
Yes, ma'am.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Meggs,
Yes.
Stilla,
yes,
unanimous vote. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
thank you, Mikhail. And
Thank you, everyone. I truly appreciate it.
Item
Thank
number
you.
12, consideration of authorizing the general manager upon review and approval of council to execute a contract for real estate services with Century Urban. We have the Century Urban folks on the call. Here's a presentation. Steve, you want to introduce them?
Thank you very much. I think we'll probably get to having self-introductions, or I may hand it over to Bryant. I'll just briefly introduce this item in terms of the process that led up to this point, and then I'm going to turn it over to Felicia, who will then introduce Bryant Sparkman and get this thing underway. At staff level, we started to have the confidence that we were going to clean up the 2000 Larkspur Landing Circle property around February to April timeframe. Okay, you know, COVID came along, there were a lot of uncertainties, but as we gained confidence, we saw the light at the end of the tunnel and we issued a RFQ for real estate consulting services for what happens after the cleanup of the 2000 Larkspur Landing property. So May 20th, we issued an RFQ. We gave respondents a full month till June 29th to submit documents. We announced in the RFQ that we would have interviews between July 15th and July 30th, which we did. We interviewed, and so on June 29th, we received 4 applications. We elected to interview 3 applicants, and the panel consisted of myself and Felicia Newhouse, the assistant general manager, and Andrea Clark, district counsel. And we ranked the applicants, and today we're recommending that you retain Century Urban to provide the board real estate services for the disposition of the property at Larkspur Landing Circle. And with that, I'd like to hand over the presentation to Felicia, who's done a great job of managing this item.
Thank you, General Manager Moore. I just want to add on as additional information with regards to what the district has been asking as part of the RFQ. We were really looking for quite a large breadth of experience and depth of experience in a variety of areas, specifically real estate financial analysis, valuations, appraisals, market and economic impact analysis, and other real estate consulting services, as well as demonstrate experience in real estate transactions for public entities. The RFQ also requested a public engagement process experience, calling for tax-exempt bonds experience, working with municipal jurisdictions, screening potential developers, and negotiating ground leases. So as you can hear just from that variety of different industries, the RFQ was asking for an expansive list of demonstrated experience, with the understanding that staff and I think the board has that the disposition of Larkspur Landing could call on as much of those different areas. So when Century Urban made their presentation to the panel, which as Steve pointed out was the general manager, myself, and legal counsel, we were very impressed with Century Urban's structure, in that they are comprised of a suite of boutique firms, each with their own individual expertise in a variety of these areas. So with that, I'd like to turn the presentation over to one of Century Urban's principals, Bryant Sparkman, who's also joined by one of the other principals here, Leo Moss. So with that, Bryant, the screen is yours.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Felicia, and good evening to the board members. My name is Bryant Sparkman. I am a principal with Century Urban. I first want to share we're very excited, enthusiastic, and pleased to be with Ross Valley Sanitary District board and staff this evening. I think it probably goes without saying that the Larkspur Landing project is an amazing piece of real estate comprised of roughly 11 acres, which really does afford the ability to produce revenue and diversification for the district and its ratepayers. So we were asked today to prepare a presentation. And so we've got a handful of slides. I also want to share that we have our project team with us today, who will go through their various pieces of the presentation. But first and foremost, I'll just.
I don't mean to interrupt. I just want to make a point of information. A board member has requested how they can see various members who are presenting. So I apologize. There is a button at the top of your screen in the middle, and it's on mine. It currently says View Everyone, and you can move down to View Who's Talking or View Active Cameras. So therefore, you can have a better view of someone you may want to see a bit better. I apologize, Bryant, for the interruption.
Oh, no problem, Julia. And if there's any technical issues, let us know. I know we're all adapting to this new environment that we're in with virtual meetings and calls, as much as we'd all love to be together in person. So we'll be brief this evening as best we can. We've been asked to present a handful of slides, and we did have the opportunity to present to the Finance Committee yesterday at 11 a.m. With Mary and Tom, and I thought we had a very, very good conversation. So Century Urban, who are we? We are a full service real estate investment and advisory firm. Our principals have a great deal of experience with investment underwriting, asset management, strategic portfolio plans, and other advisory services in all major property types. We currently serve 16 public agencies throughout the Bay Area, and have become a trusted advisor to many of these public agencies, where really we leverage our longstanding and seasoned relationships with the land use development and broader investment community to bring forth real-time market information. One of the things we've had a great deal of success in over the last 5 years is really kind of working with some of our public agency clients on an RFQ and RFP process to select a third-party developer or to set up some form of a public-private partnership. On the screen, we really have 3 slides, projects we're really proud of. The top right is the Mission Rock project with the San Francisco Giants, where we helped to negotiate the deal amongst the Giants, the Port of San Francisco, in addition to the City and County of San Francisco. The middle deal that you can see is really UC Hastings College of the Law, where we were helping them to commence construction on a new faculty and student housing development project. And the third is the Balboa Reservoir, which was approved by the San Francisco Board of Supervisors last week after 5 years of work. A lot of the services we provide to our public agency clients include assisting with entitlements and development feasibility, really what is the highest and best use of the site. I think oftentimes public agencies maybe don't give enough forethought as to what is the appropriate public-private partnership transaction structure. And that's things we work with our clients to put together workshops so we can all remember what it's like not to know and to learn through that process. We also play a role in negotiating documents that include ground leases, development agreements, and also mitigating risk for our public agency clients. As I had alluded to a little bit earlier, we have been working on the Mission Rock project for almost a decade. And really, this is a public-private partnership between the San Francisco Giants and now the master developer, Tishman Speyer, and the Port of San Francisco, where we acted as a strategic development and real estate advisor to negotiate the deal, a tri-party deal amongst the Port, City, and Giants. And our role really started off small to start on this project, where we did the project level underwriting, then it grew into the financial structuring, and then it grew into kind of a multi-phase, just-in-time public infrastructure components and how do you finance that. So this was a really wonderful project that we're very grateful to have been a part of. It will, when built, be approximately 1,500 units with retail in addition to office in 4 separate phases, and generate a significant amount of annual ground rent to the Port of San Francisco to fund many of their projects. Now, many of our projects are located all throughout the Bay Area. We do have some experience with our North Bay clients, which include the San Rafael Chamber of Commerce, in addition to SMART, along with the city going south, the city of South San Francisco, and the PUC. Now, our project team, everyone was really handpicked to be a part of this project. And these are all firms and principals we know very, very well, who are recognized as leaders in their respective fields of work. So for land use, planning, entitlement assistance, and community outreach, we are working with Lynette Diaz, who's the founder and principal of Urban Planning Partners. Lynette has over 25 years of urban planning experience and runs a small and disadvantaged business that really has produced significant results with the community outreach process over the last decade. We're also very pleased and excited to have in our team LDP Architecture. The principal in charge will be Toby Levy. And Toby is known for someone who's being very thoughtful, can think outside the box, and also work with public agencies in a way that creates value. Now, this site in particular has some unique circumstances, as you all know very, very well. But the site was backfilled with concrete that had PCBs, and ultimately has kind of delayed this project where it had to hit the pause button for remediation. And a lot of that remediation was funded by tax-exempt bonds. And so we brought on our team Bob Gamble, who's a managing director with PFM, to help assist in terms of how can we unwind those bonds? When's the right time to repay them so that there's not defeasance, penalties, or things of that nature? Last but not least, I'm really excited to be working with CBRE, who will be led by the engagement by CBRE, will be led by Mike Diquino. Mike is recognized as one of the industry leaders in San Francisco and the Bay Area with land transactions. So Mike brings a great deal of experience in addition to one of his partners, Rob, who focuses on valuation and appraisal. Now, in terms of how we've set up our team, Century Urban will be the prime to lead the engagement, and we will set up a collaborative team approach managed by me as the principal in charge to ensure adherence to the project objectives and schedule. Together, we'll develop a work plan drawing from a pool of our subject matter experts to put forth really timely and cost-effective, task orders and work as we work through the various phases to select a developer and ultimately create value. One of the things that we think is really important is regular communication. What is that cadence? How are we communicating? and how are we working with senior leadership at the district, in addition to the board, as we all try to figure out what is the best approach for the project. Now, I'd like to hand off and introduce the board to Toby Levy. Toby will play the role on an as-needed basis for on-site planning. So with that being said, Toby, I'd like to hand off to you if you're available.
Sure. Oh, wait. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Toby, we can
You
hear you
me?
just fine.
Okay, great. Okay, great. Thanks, Bryant. I'm the founding principal of Levy Design Partners. We're a full-service architectural firm, and our role here is actually to use our experience to generate options that everybody else will use. We're definitely part of the team, and we hear what the, we sort of evaluate, see what the options are, and then generate real schemes that then could be evaluated and flushed out. We have experience in a lot of mixed use developments around the Bay Area. And I was also vice chair of the Citizens Planning Task Force for rezoning Weston Soma with the San Francisco Planning Department. Also, we have a lot of experience in affordable as well as market rate housing. The next slide. Do we have the next? Okay. The things that we will start with in order to everybody to have common ground is we start with site analysis. And in this case, I'm using a project that we're doing currently in Lafayette. It's a 72-unit project in downtown Lafayette, opposite their new learning center, but also it's fairly high density adjacent to a residential neighborhood, and it has a creek going in the back of it, as well as other sort of pedestrian and transportation issues. In Novato, we worked with Mid-Penn, an affordable housing development, to assess a site that had view corridors, watershed, as well as a very high parking demand. So all these go into determining what is a reasonable project to consider for this site. Next. One of the things that is unique to our firm that we bring to these processes is that we're very much involved with the various different types of housing that is sort of going on in this time. The one on the upper right, was a senior housing project in San Jose on its light rail. And in this case, we actually looked into evaluating what a modular construction technique would do to make the bonds and other financing work. I was also involved as a volunteer during Coffey Park after the fires to try and generate housing types that would essentially be like single family homes, but had built-in ADU possibilities. And lastly, in Oakland, we're working with a developer on a variety of housing that fits within neighborhoods, but also can be either a modern day boarding house or a large family home. And, in all cases, we're very cognizant that the massing to fit into neighborhoods has a big determinant on what the project can be. Next slide. And finally, we've worked with a number of projects, a lot of these with Century Urban. We're very familiar with working with public agencies in evaluating early possibilities for sites. The one on the upper right is a project in Oxnard, which is in downtown Oxnard, next to their Carnegie Library, and they were looking to evaluate the uses for 3 parking lots that are sort of like eyesores around their public square. And we were working with the city and the developer to look at 360 housing units. And the projects below are all projects with Century Urban, where we were looking at San Francisco housing, moving a community center to see how many units would fit there, or evaluating a site that was owned by the housing authority to see if what would work with reusing the proceeds for an office building, changing for housing, and finally just the high density project we recently completed with Brian for the San Francisco FDA to just look at what the capacity of sites were and giving people a form of what the massing might look like. All these projects were done with Century Urban, and I think they each yielded more specifics that would later be evaluated and priced out. And now I'll hand it over to Lynette, who tells everybody about how we get it done.
Thank you, Toby. Can everybody hear me?
Yep, we can hear you, Lynette, just fine.
Okay, great. So it is saying that it's not using it is. Okay, sorry about that. Welcome. Okay, it's hot this evening. So good evening. I'm Lynette Diaz, founder and president of Urban Planning Partners, and I'm very pleased to be part of the Century Urban team. Brian and I have worked together before. I'm currently working with Toby on a couple projects, and I think all of our services are really, and our strengths are really complementary to each other, and we would bring a super team to the district. So just want to tell you a little bit about Urban Planning Partners. We're a consulting firm that's somewhat uniquely split. About 50% of our work is for the private sector and about 50% is for the public sector. Our services include community outreach and engagement, land use and planning policy, development services, environmental CEQA review, contract planning, and grant writing. And the part of being split between the public and private sector is really something that I think is, like I said, relatively unique to our firm, and it just really provides a different perspective than a lot of consultants have. We make a point to have about half of our staff work as an extension of staff as contract planners for cities. We've done so in Marin County for Novato and San Rafael at different points in time. And then we also work for developers, and we understand their perspective, and we help bring their projects through the process, as well as landowners such as yourself. A significant part of my work over the years has been focused on public-private partnerships on reuse and redevelopment of project sites similar to this site, many of them near transit, formerly brownfields, and surrounded by established development. These are the types of projects that I love. They're typically quite complex and very controversial. And I'm bored if that's not the situation. So our clients regularly compliment us for our values and how much they show through in our work. And that's we care, we reach, we collaborate, and we are real. And you will get all of those pieces with every bit of the work we do. And that's one of the things that's really I value about this team, is I think all the players represent those values. We do our best work as partners with our clients and communities in which we work, and that's why we're called Urban Planning Partners. So just to talk about our land use work a little bit and entitlements, we really focus on how to make the process work and be efficient, but be successful. And there's so many different pieces, and we are really committed to doing a roadmap that shows the parallel processes that need to happen and how those interrelate with each other, when to start and when to stop, when to connect the pieces and when to keep them on their own path. And on these types of projects, that's really, really important. And just to highlight a couple projects, we've done that for the Truckee, reuse of the Truckee Rail Yard with Union Pacific and the town of Truckee, extending their downtown, and been working on that project for quite some time. We also just recently worked with BART and the city of Fremont on planning the Irvington BART station and doing, looking at different development scenarios, as well as extensive community outreach and engagement on that. And let's go ahead and move to the next slide. Our Community engagement work, I'm excited to be partnering with Ross Gehrig, who's with Century Marin, and who I'll turn it over to for a few minutes, who has significant Marin County experience. He has a lot of political strategy experience and public relations, and that will really complement our more on the ground community bottom up approach in bringing the community along with the project, and as well as working with city staff to do the same. We really work hard to identify our outcomes and key stakeholders up front, and what do we want to get out of the community engagement process aside from getting the project approved? What do we want the process when people talk about it? We want people to feel engaged. We want a good cross-section of the community. And how do we best do that? So we really use a very holistic approach. We remain very flexible, and we adapt as we go along. We're really into instilling transparency, inclusivity, adaptability, and we always try to make it fun and give people a reason to show up. In light of COVID, we've been doing a lot of deep dives into how to best do community engagement given the constraints that we have. With that, and just in the given time, I want to go ahead and turn it over to Ross and let him share a little bit about his experience and his approach.
Great. Thanks, Lynette. I'll be very brief. So my name is Ross Gehrig. I'm a communications and land use consultant, and I'm based here in Marin County. I live in Novato. Really, my entire role is to complement all of the outreach and public engagement by bringing kind of the local perspective and knowledge of Ross Valley, as well as the greater Marin community. With that, I know this site really well. I certainly know its history, and we all know on the team that there's going to be a lot of interest within the community as well as the local media with regard to this project and whatever gets redeveloped. So all things considered, we'll have a very proactive and thoughtful approach to all of this, and making sure that the right stakeholders and the right and thoughtful public relations are executed in the right timing and the right manner. I think that's going to be very important. So with that, I'll just be throwing it over to Robert Gamble, who is also on our project team.
Great, thanks, Ross.
Good evening.
Bob, you with us still?
I am. I was just getting off of mute. Good evening, everybody. Just a couple of quick points. I am a managing director with Public Financial Management. We are the leading financial advisor to government and nonprofits in the United States. A typical year, we manage anywhere from 700 or 800 to 1,200 bond issues across the United States. I am based in San Francisco, and so my practice is very much focused in California. And in particular, I also do a great deal of work on public-private partnerships. And within that context, my focus is really how to make public financing techniques work well within a public-private partnership format. And so, although my work is up and down the state of California, I do have a great deal of local touches in my clients. Some of those are listed below on this slide: Palo Alto, Santa Cruz, Napa, and Sonoma, City of Santa Rosa. In both Napa and Santa Rosa, I've worked with them on public-private partnerships using public land like this one. So that's sort of who PFM is and what I do. So let's take a look at your situation on the next slide. So you issued bonds in 2019, and you clearly contemplated the possibility of this arrangement that we're talking about this evening, because you put into the bond issuance a very unusual redemption provision, which does permit redemption of the bonds in 2022. And this had to be put in, of course, to avoid negative tax consequences at the time. But it's good, and it was good that you had the foresight to do it, because it does give you some options about how to proceed. The most straightforward way to proceed is simply to use that redemption provision in 2022 as this process moves forward. And I think the general view of our team is that that should work well as a timing matter. there are some other options. Current law, although current law doesn't allow an advance refunding at this point, which would mean sort of taking out the bonds before 2022, there might be an option of doing a taxable advance refunding if the rates work well. We currently have extremely low rates, and so that could be a possibility now, but those relationships between the tax exempt and taxable markets are always changing. There's also a possibility that Congress would add back the potential use of advance refundings on a tax exempt basis. Those were legal for many years, and there are provisions in current proposals for Congress to do that, but we certainly don't count on that happening at this point. Basically, you have a few options going forward, and we feel that we understand those well. We've talked to bond counsel and are comfortable with what you have, and believe that we can help you work through those provisions to get the outcome that you need to dovetail with the the significant real estate task that you have in front of you. That's it. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Bob. And then last but not least, I'd like to introduce Mike Diquino from CBRE. Mike can give a quick overview of his practice and his high-level observations on the site.
Thanks, Brian. Hello, everybody. Again, my name is Mike Diquino, and I run the capital markets team for CBRE out of the San Francisco office. CBRE is the largest commercial real estate company in the world, and why that's important is our access to global capital when we are assigned with a sales assignment typically allows us to bring in buyers that otherwise would not see opportunities such as this. My experience is pretty vast. Over the last 10 years, we've sold nearly 4,500 units of ground-up residential around the Bay Area, most recently having sold just across the Richmond Bridge an 85-acre parcel in the town of Richmond. And we also recently sold a large redevelopment site to the city of San Francisco, which was surplus land. In the event Brian and his team decide that sale strategy is the best way to execute on large first plan, we would run a process in which we would maximize pricing through a formal bid process of all the consultants that are on the phone today. My partner, Rob Hensley, was not able to make the call today, but he runs our valuation practice, and they have actually worked this site before. So both the brokerage and the valuation portion of the deal we have covered with CBRE.
Great. Thank you so much, Mike. And I think just in terms of kind of to close this out, I know it's getting late in the evening, process and next steps. Really, I think the goal would be to put together a district as part of the phase 1 process, to put together a district workshops to review our broader goals and objectives. I think we need to really give some deliberate forethought as to the evaluation of the right public-private partnership transaction structure, whether that be a ground lease where the district retains ownership of the land with annual and ongoing ground rent, or if it's an option for a developer to purchase the land with a larger kind of one-time payment, or the kind of less traditional approach with public agencies, which would be a joint venture with a third-party developer. As Lynette touched upon earlier, the community outreach process and approach is going to be really important to figure out how we gather additional buy-in and support as the project moves forward. In addition to working with Toby to look at the existing planning, site planning, and what is there today, and how that might impact value now and in the future. And last but not least, really working with district staff and the board such that everyone's making an informed decision to the benefit of the ratepayers. And then once we've done all that, potentially getting Mike and CBRE involved in terms of an RFQ and RFP process to select a third-party private developer. So that being said, we're very excited to be working with the district. We're excited about this opportunity. We've really appreciated the process that's been led by Steve and Felicia. So with that, that really concludes our presentation this evening, and we're happy to address any questions you may have.
Thank you. Board members, any questions? Yes, Pam. Unmute yourself, please.
Unmute, Pam.
Bottom. Okay, you can hear me now, right? Yes, okay. So just a quick question. There looks like a team of about six of you. And I'm curious, do you all work together and check in with each other? Do you do separate? I know you all have separate disciplines. Just wondering how you function as a 6-member team, and also the costs are all based hourly, correct? There's no other costs or cost of the sale of the property or some other kind of cost?
Yeah, so Pam, great question. I think the first part of your question, so there's 5 firms in total. Century Urban is the prime. So Century Urban will be acting as the lead consultant, and we will bring in and oversee the sub-consultants on an as-needed basis. So it's kind of ordering off the menu for those respective services that may or may not be needed as part of the process. Such it's really a seamless execution for the district. The good news is we've had many years of experience with everyone here today. So we know each other well in terms of how we communicate, how we work together. And so we really do have a seasoned team. In terms of the billing, we bill on a time and materials basis for this process, which is an hourly compensation. And that is how we structure these deals with our public clients, public agency clients. And that's the norm, and that's standard. And that's how we've been successful in our various endeavors. In terms of any kind of potential, fees down the road, really what we've negotiated is a phase 1 scope of services, which says, look, let's just figure out, what are our goals, what are our objectives, and how do we get there? And so in the event there's a phase 2, a phase 3, we work directly with staff and likely, a board approval, I would presume, such that we authorize that before we move forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet, Pam.
Sorry, any other questions from the board? Yes, Doug.
Yeah, this represents $171,000 on phase 1. What are we getting into? There's 6 phases here. So what's the cost of this project?
So I think it's a good question. I think that was Tom. And so the first phase is really, kind of here on this particular slide, which is really outlining, these various kind of elements. I think the phases 2, 3, and 4, whatever the phase may be, really that's at the discretion of the district. Where do we go from here? Is it a sell it today? Is it a let's, kind of revisit the site planning, the entitlements, which may be a different phase with either Toby or Lynette. And ultimately that's going to be driven by the workshops that we have, with the board, the workshops with staff. So really that's a decision, I think, for the board. I mean, there are no kind of cost estimates for those components because they just don't exist today.
Well, I have one more question. I'm sorry, I can't. I can't tell if something happened to the computer. I can't tell if I'm on or not. But anyway, quick question about your public, private, and your leasing experience. Is that one of your strong areas?
So Pamela, just to clarify your question, I think your question is our experience with public-private partnerships and leasing?
Yes.
Okay. So Century Urban, along with the project team, we have significant experience in establishing and setting up public-private partnerships. I would go so far as to say in San Francisco, Century Urban is probably known as the leader in setting up P3s with the city and county of San Francisco, in addition to the city of Oakland and other projects. I will also say PFM with Bob Gamble has worked on a number of public-private partnerships as well. So to answer your question, yes, we have a great deal of experience in that. In terms of actual leasing, like ground leases, we do a lot of work in negotiating ground leases. As an example, the Mission Rock project is on a 75-year unsubordinated ground lease. And we were really the architects behind that ground lease, in addition to Pier 70 with the Port of San Francisco and Brookfield. On the leasing side, in terms of if you're kind of referencing more traditional office leasing, I would say that is a skill set that falls squarely more in the CBRE camp with Mike Diquino and his team. But they do bring those resources to bear should they be needed in the future.
Great, thank you.
I have a question. What do you envision the time phase for, the timing for phase one? Just, I know it's not, easy, but in general, what do you think it'll take?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. We discussed that, really, with Steve, in addition to Felicia. And I don't think everyone has, 100% full consensus, but I think the general thinking is this is kind of a 6-month process. To the extent we can do it sooner and faster, rest assured we'd love to. But really, sometimes from our perspective, you've got to go slow before you go fast, especially when you're working with a public agency and its board to gather consensus, an alignment on approach, and really, what is the district looking for? Is it an annual kind of income stream in the form of ground rent, or is it kind of a big lump sum payment? So I would say phase one, it's probably kind of in the 6-month range as just a kind of guesstimate.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, Michael?
Steve Moore, when did we get a sign off from the EPA about the property? And do we see any hitches at this point, or is it a done deal that we're going to get a full clearance from the EPA?
Yes, there's no done deal at this point, but we're doing everything in our power to respond to their requests and changes of course, and so it's a journey, and we're not at journey's end. It's going well. We haven't tripped up on anything yet, so we hope we get a letter from them soon after closure. We hope that it would be 45 days or so after we're really substantively complete. So that's mid-October. But we take nothing for granted. There's things like government shutdowns. We were getting ready for approval in December 2019, and then the government shut down, or 2018, and it delayed approval for 3 months, which delayed construction and made it a 2 construction season project. So you think I'm going to take anything for granted? So that's uncertain, but we're doing everything we can to manage the uncertainty.
So we could go full steam ahead now with Century Urban, knowing that there could conceivably be a hitch and have to slow down again, or have to slow down a bit.
There's a bit, you can proceed in parallel.
Okay, thank you.
There can be an overlap of, and we believe as staff, we're recommending to the board today that it's appropriate to move along. But you asked the question in a certain way, and so, I'm going to answer it honestly and transparently.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, anything else from the board? Any public commenting on this item?
I want to mention that Mr. Sparkman is a ratepayer. Not that it had any impact. That was something when you introduced yourself to the to the panel. That was one of the first things you said, and And it showed to us that you understand and have been tracking the history here. You're familiar with it. And I want to say that I was struck by how genuine you are in how how you approached us initially about that. The fact that you're a ratepayer, you understand the gravity of the decisions that are before us, and our genuine goal of striking a balance between maximum benefit for our ratepayers and really benefiting the community that surrounds this special piece of property. And I think you and the project team brought that understanding. And so I want to emphasize that to the board.
Thank you, Steve. And for the board's benefit, I am a resident of Larkspur. I am a ratepayer. But beyond that, 2 members of our team actually grew up in Marin County, that being Ross and Mike. So we're very sensitive to the community needs, the community concerns. And we also recognize, having done and worked on many of these public-private partnerships, it's not always about the economic value, but a lot of it will be the community benefits as well. And so that's something in terms of threading the needle to do this in a nice, equitable manner and fashion. We'll obviously be working very hard to figure that out. So thank you, Steve, for those words. And again, we're excited about this project, the value that it brings to the city of Larkspur, in addition to the district. So thank you again for those words.
Yeah, I just regret we can't now have a recess and get to know each other a little better like we would at a board meeting. But I just for my part, thanks everyone for showing up, doing the go-to meeting tonight. We wish we had a little more time to get to know you all a little better, but we really appreciate all the disciplines that you bring to the table. And the perspectives that's necessary, I think, for successful delivery of something that will have a lasting beneficial impact to the community.
Mary.
Maybe COVID will end before this project gets started. Yes. Doug.
Okay. Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Everybody's very well qualified, and I'm very happy about that. But what are we signing off on? Because there's 6 phases, and I don't even see in the first area, because I see a termination by any time with or without cause in this moment. But I understand there's an estimate of $171,000 for phase 1. Is this contract in any way indemnifying us to phase 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? What are we signing up here for? And that's kind of an Andrea question.
Or Steve or Felicia.
I think I need to hear it again with respect to the indemnity. Are you asking about because I think, and Felicia and Steve can correct me if I'm wrong, but the contract is for this initial phase. But Felicia and Steve, maybe you can comment on how the additional phasing would look.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in here. The ideal scenario, of course, is that we would retain a relationship with Century Urban throughout the entirety of the process for disposition of the property. I think the situation that we're in now is we don't really know what direction the disposition of the property is going to take, and that's why this particular contract is structured for a phase 1 scope of work for the board to consider approving, and that specific scope of work is listed out as you've observed, with no obligation to continue with Century Urban after that. What am I trying to say? The final product of the phase 1 that we discussed with Bryant, Steve and I and Bryant, is a white paper of sorts that would summarize the board's direction for final disposition of the property based on the exercises that are undertaken in that phase one scope of work. And Brian, feel free to jump in there if you think I've missed anything.
No, I think that's absolutely consistent with the spirit and intent of this. So there's no obligation beyond the first phase. In the first phase, the project really does need to figure out in terms of the transaction structure, how we want to go about this. Is it an outright sale? Is it a ground lease? And then running a process, potentially to select a developer. But it also goes to the current entitlements. So the site does have approvals. The question is the site, given the additional, land that's available as part of this project that was not originally approved, how much additional density and value is there? Is that worth kind of revisiting the entitlements with site planning? So really, it's a white paper, a written kind of communication for the board, for the staff, but also this is an iterative process, meeting with the board, meeting with staff, so we can get everyone's thinking what's important to the ratepayers, and how do we do this really thoughtful, strategic, and deliberate manner is really how we've approached this to date, to commence this project and to get it moving forward now that the NFA with the EPA is closely approaching.
Does that answer your question, Doug?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, anything else on this item? Then I'll entertain a motion.
I am very excited about doing this and move to authorize the general manager, upon review and approval of council, to execute a contract for the real estate services with Century Urban.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Tom, thank you. Julia, roll call?
Yes. Borstein,
Yes.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Meggs,
Yes.
Scylla,
Yes.
unanimous vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for attending this evening.
Great, thank you. We're very excited for this opportunity, and I speak on behalf of the entire team. So thank you, and we very much look forward to this opportunity.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Great.
Good night. Good night.
Item number 13, consideration of authorizing the general manager upon review and approval of legal counsel to approve an amendment to task order number 5 with Kennedy Jenks for $116,900 regarding Larkspur Landing. Steve, do you want to tell us about that?
Hi, yes, speaking of Larkspur Landing. No, it's my pleasure to, I introduced Todd Miller, my indefatigable project manager for the Larkspur Landing cleanup. He's been here with us long before me, right? He worked with Greg Norby on the site characterization, which was aggressive, right? We use that word, every 25 feet, a deep 25 foot core, at any rate. Well-characterized site. So I just wanted to bring to you the proposal to augment the budget for the construction management and engineering services during construction. As my staff report on item 13 lays out, there was some anticipation of a potential splitting of the project into 2 summers instead of doing the 1 summer. And I even touched on that in my example a minute ago, that had EPA given the approval on time, we might have squeezed it all into 1 summer. But it's turned out, it's been a little less blood pressure by getting it done in 2 summers. But there is a cost in terms of time. And there were some other costs in terms of additional oversight needed and we listed a task for the COVID-19 compliance. That was one extra cost. And so splitting it into 2 summers has increased the budget for Kennedy Jenks oversight on the order of 9% or 8%, which we think from a staff level is reasonable. And it's still quite a small percentage compared to other sewer projects that we do in terms of the overall percent of these functions of the contract construction cost. It's still in the neighborhood of 11%, when we can see that percentage be up around 20% or more. So with that, I wanted to recommend that we augment the budget. It's on the order of $116,900, which requires board approval. And thanks, Todd, for joining us. And I was wondering if you wanted to add anything in terms of a brief summary of why extra budget is necessary.
Sure, Steve, thank you. And I will first start out by saying, notice I was very silent when Steve was talking about the assurity of EPA giving us a no further action. So, you know, as with any government regulatory body, that approval is what we always strive for, and it's never assured, but we do everything in our power to make sure that the agencies are brought along, you know, in real time as we're finding out new information and as we're driving the project forward. I have personally been keeping the EPA project manager, Carmen Santos, up to speed on a weekly basis to make sure that she's fully involved with all the decisions we're making, that when data come out that might be different than what we expect, that she has clear knowledge of what those data show. She has the ability to have time to make a decision based on those data. And then we have, you know, almost in every case, simply taken her decision at its word and move forward with what she requested. We've tried to be very accepting, even though it's in many cases resulted in extra work on the district's part. That extra work, which is a small amount, a small percentage, and I can give you a few examples, but that extra work at the end of the day is what we're really doing is building that rapport and not giving EPA that ammunition they might otherwise have to say, well, you didn't do X, therefore we can't give you the approval. So we've taken the counter approach and everything they've asked for within reason. You know, a good example is as we started digging again yet this year, we knew where we expected to encounter this demolition debris, this buried, crushed concrete that we've all been chasing for the last year and a half. We had an assumption or had good information through the site characterization process of where we expect to find it. And we put a line on a map and said, this is the area we expect to find it. Well, when we stepped outside of that line, even by 5 extra feet, EPA said, well, that's extra material. You have to handle that separately and you have to characterize that material separately, even though it was an extension of what we were already, you know, excavating and treating. And so we simply agreed and said, okay, tell us, you know, we negotiated a sample rate. We negotiated, you know, that we would stockpile it separately and handle it separately and dispose of it separately, all based on those requirements. Last year, the requirement for sampling that material was 1 bulk sample for every 400 cubic yards. When this year started, EPA came back and said, well, we'd be more comfortable if you sampled 1 bulk sample for every 200 cubic yards. Okay, at the end of the day, not a big change, but it was a change nonetheless, and it required us to step back and work with the contractor on, okay, we have to stage the material a little differently. We have to, you know, do all these things. The EPA's made some good decisions. In many cases, we ran into areas that are native material at a depth more shallow than we anticipated. We might have designed the excavation to go to 20 feet and we hit 17 feet. And we identified native material and we went to EPA and said, we would like to sample the material that's native rather than dig it and dispose of it. So they allowed us to make that pitch. They allowed us to sample it at, you know, at a rate that EPA agreed to, and then present those samples and show them that the material was clean, and therefore we could limit the amount of excavation based on, you know, good oversight that, you know, the difference between what is fill material and what is native material. So through those cooperative efforts with the EPA, I'm pretty confident at the end of the day, we are going to get a no further action. It may not be 45 days, it might be 60 or 90, but we're certainly going to do everything we can the moment this digging process is done. As a matter of fact, we've already started, which is start that construction completion report and get all of our ducks in a row and get all of that material lined up such that we can get a report over to the agency before they have a chance to forget what went on and what their decisions were, and that they can then turn around the data or the assessment and tell us that yes, we've done everything that they've requested, and we can move on and get a no further action agreement from them.
Great, thank you, Todd. Yeah, and every time we sample, it comes up clean. There was that one place where there was a stockpile. We were like, oh, that's a little bit above the action level. We dug down 4 feet, and then it was clean. So
yep.
Yeah, we just keep confirming what we figure is there, but we have to do it to be in compliance.
Right. Board members, any questions?
Don't send the results via the post office, please.
Can I physically walk them over there?
Yeah, we'll approve that.
Yeah, okay.
All right, I don't think we have any public remaining on the line at this point. As Tom said in committee, I think we have to do this. Or maybe it was one of the other things we have to do. Yes, Tom.
So I'm looking at the new budget, and the cost increases are related to construction management services, 66,000, and engineering services during construction. We're getting back feed. So the construction management is a result of increased time on the project?
Correct. Both of those are increased time. Yes.
Well, wouldn't engineering services be, you need to do engineering studies or something?
So engineering services during construction represent things like reviewing the contractor's RFIs and assessing those relative to the specifications and making sure that what the contractor is proposing to do for a specific task meets the contractual obligations that they're bound to. It also includes reviewing geotechnical information when they had to do the sheet piling and the shoring walls, and having a geotechnical engineer review that material or review their submittals to make sure that the risks are averted based on their processes that they're implementing in the field. Looking at the backfill specifications, looking at the backfill results. When they do a compaction test, we have an obligation to review those compaction tests and make sure that they meet the standards. So those are typically the engineering services during construction. Construction management more relates to managing the contractor, managing the process, dealing with EPA, making sure that the project is moving forward in the manner that it's designed.
Okay, all right. Well, I think we're kind of stuck. We're into this thing for a long time. We're dying to figure it out. So
there were some savings, though. You know there are increases there, but they sharpened their pencil on project management and other tasks. We had, and the COVID compliance wasn't staggering. It was about 10,000.
And we might get refunded on that, right? On the COVID from our
yes,
EP.
We're flagging the COVID change orders on all our capital projects. Correct.
Yeah, so pre-construction activities were down about over $10,000, and the other one was down about 10 as well. So yeah, that's totaled in. Well, I'd like to make a motion. I authorize the general manager upon review and approval of legal counsel to approve amendment to task order number 5 with Kennedy Jenks by an amount of $16,900, not to exceed $1,090,000 for construction management and engineering services and construction for the Larkspur Landing excavation and remediation project.
Second.
Michael seconds. All those in favor? Roll call, rather.
Yes. Borstein,
Yes.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Kelly is absent. Megs,
Yes.
Scylla.
Yes.
Thank you. 401 vote.
Here he comes. Kelly.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Great.
Can you vote now?
Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Todd.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Todd.
Item number 14, discussion and direction on board compensation policy. Felicia, do you want to, or Steve?
Felicia.
Either?
Yeah, I'll be happy to. Thank you, President Silla. So this item arose from some confusion of my staff who were trying to do the monthly reimbursement to individual board members for specific meetings that they had attended. And it occurred to us during that process, which it from time to time has been, consists of some communications going back and forth between the board clerk and my payroll clerk and the board members, that we don't actually have a written policy for meetings, specific meeting types that the board members are eligible for reimbursement. So the staff report is asking that the board have a discussion and provide staff with some direction on a written policy that we would then draft and subsequently present to the board for adoption. I think the highlights here really are, attendance at board meetings, standing committee meetings, ad hoc or temporary committee meetings, service on other boards such as CMSA and NBWA, and attendance at conferences. So with that, I would actually turn it back to the board. I'm happy to answer any questions that might come up with regards to those processes for reimbursement and compensation. As an aside, I would also mention that staff is also looking into the regulations pertaining to payrolling versus what I'd sort of colloquially say, or 1099ing board members as a compensation process. And we're still doing some research on that, and we'll be reporting back to the board at a future meeting. So with that, unless Andrea or Steve would like to add anything, again, I would just turn it over to the board for their discussion and possible direction.
Thank you. Board members, do you have any questions about this? Go ahead, Pam.
I called Judy Schriebman, who's on the Las Ballinas board, and just to talk to her about their policy, and I pulled it up. It's awesome. The section on the board member compensation is very clear and direct. It also includes webinars for compensation, as well as tours of district facilities, and it's very comprehensive, I have to say, very detailed and specific and measurable. So I'm wondering if Felicia or maybe the board could look at this. I also found, they have a policy for medical and dental benefits. And I'm a little confused on how they do it, but you get paid $200 per month. I have it pulled up because I couldn't find it on their website, but they've been doing this for many years, many years. And I'm wondering about looking at this as well. I think if you don't use the policy, you get the money. It's a little confusing. So anyway, I would really hope that we could look at that. And then last, also on the, there were some questions about whether or not we want to be paid. I had actually talked about, well, during COVID, I know other boards and some other cities and what have you, they took a cut or whatever. But if I didn't want to be paid, I didn't want to be forced to be paid if I didn't want to be paid for a board meeting. And Andrea and I talked about that because there's nothing in our current policy that says you have to be paid for a board meeting. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay. Tell me, did you say where is Julie Schreibman a board member?
Schriebman, she's at the Las Ballinas.
Okay.
Her and so they, I actually had the link, but I didn't. I was worried I'd break the Brown Act if I emailed it all to you. So I do have it. If you go on their website, it's very easy to find. It's on the front thing of board something. I can't remember. So anyway, it's just well done. It's very clear. They actually have another section of usual and reasonable costs and training. They have more on training and seminars. It looks just more modern and up to date.
Anybody else have anything to say right now? Yes, Tom. I saw you unmute.
Well, I don't understand what you want us to do with that, Pamela. You want us to delay this conversation and then get this other document and take a look at maybe this or another one?
I don't think that's a delay. I think that what this is direction, direction on board policy. So there's nothing wrong with saying, let's do this and this and this and look at this and bring it back, because it sounds like they want, Felicia wants to bring this back anyway with a written policy. This isn't a written policy, so we have to have a written policy. So there's nothing wrong with looking.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I realize Pam's comments go to maybe there are more things that should be compensated, and the finance committee was thinking maybe there should be fewer things compensated, particularly when folks attend, multiple days of a conference. Is that incentivizing that and then what's the value back to the board? That was our conversation. So I had said I thought maybe just attending RVSD meetings and standing committee meetings, and that should be the limit of the compensation. So maybe we need to have a conversation about whether we think we're compensated enough overall or not enough overall. I think Doug has certainly said, and I've agreed, that the MMWD covering people's health insurance is actually kind of a travesty. So I think if we were to suddenly say we wanted some of our health insurance or dental to be covered, that wasn't the direction I thought this was going.
Let me speak out loud and because I can put my thumbs down, but for the record, I want to agree with you, Mary. I don't agree with the MMWD policy, and I don't want to implement one such policy here. I think it incentivizes people to never leave. So you've got people on other boards that have been there 25 years. It's like, that was never the plan, man. That's not the deal. So I don't support that. So I
as health insurance costs rise, in an uncontrolled manner, I just think it's.
As far as conventions, I didn't attend the online convention, so I didn't. I'm not seeking any compensation, but particularly when it depends on what you're doing. I think we could look at that. If I did attend the CASA meeting, did I attend 1 hour or 5 hours or 8 hours? I think that's something that should be in consideration. So, but secondly, if I'm going there, well, then I'm probably, and I am, taking off work. And so I'm losing something at that end. So, that's not an unfair compensation.
I agree.
But on the online, maybe we should put that down as an hourly up to or something. I don't know.
Just look at their policy. I don't really care about the medical dental benefits, but they've had them there. It's pretty benign, their cost. But I do like the webinar thing, because if you do something like that, let's say for 4 hours, and it's board related, or you bring, I don't know. I'm not too picky, but I think if we need to come up to par maybe with some other agencies within Marin. And anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Yes, Michael.
I would suggest that we're really kind of doing that now, in that if I look, I attend webinars all the time. And I do them for my edification and for having conversations with Steve or Felicia or things like that. But if I saw something that I said, "Ooh, this would really benefit the district," I would bring it to the board and ask permission to attend. The same that we do with CASA, the same that we do with special districts, and we as a board vote and approve that expenditure because we feel it would be appropriate for that board person member to attend that and report back and see how it would benefit the district. And so that's what I think, is that I think we're pretty good. When I got on the board, I believe that you could have multiple meetings in a day and got compensated for that. When Tom and I got onto the Central Marin Sanitation Agency, we terminated the differential pay so that we do get compensated, but it's a 1099 from Central Marin and nothing else. So I think we've been pretty above board with what we're allowed to do. But absolutely, I think we should always come back and look at it.
Well, the other thing they have is you don't get paid for a meeting under 1 hour. And like recently I went to North Bay because it was a special meeting to just elect a new executive officer. And I think I was there 30 minutes. I don't want to be paid for that. So I just think we need to be more specific and tighten up and look and see what fits us. You know, and like they have a thing about, I think they limit how many conference days you get a year. I don't think we do that at all. So anyway.
So maybe, Felicia, how would you feel about looking at other board policies? I hate to give staff more things because we can't we can't make a decision. But it sounds like Las Ballinas may have some things that we could draw upon, and then if we could look at other. So the direction is to bring us some more specifics back, and we're happy to be able to give you more direction in that way.
I think that's brilliant direction, and I will do that and bring it back to the board.
Great, thank you. All right, agenda item number 16, consideration of adopting fiscal year 2021 business plan. Steve or Felicia?
Thank you, President Silla. So really is a fiscal year plan, and so we want to try to get it kicked off a little sooner this year. I guess this is the third annual business plan, so it was kind of a new thing even when I was hired. Just as a reminder, you know, the board adopted a strategic plan in 2016 centered around effective utility management attributes, and the original business plan set up specific tasks that sometimes are core tasks for the mission of the agency. Sometimes they're a little outside the lanes as far as core work, but relate to overall board direction and achieving effective utility management. So we engaged, you appointed a business plan subcommittee last month to continue this process. And we engaged the business plan subcommittee last week and drafted an update to the business plan where we deleted items that we completed last year, and we added items we either added new items based on new ideas, new initiatives, or we are just continuing. We noticed that there are certain things we're doing that we do want to take credit for that we do every year. And so we have those type of items as well. And so we received some feedback from business committee members, Megs and Kelly, and drafted this business plan for the board's consideration. And it's a way you can kind of track staff's effectiveness, you know, in staying to timelines on certain initiatives like annexing Murray Park, which we did accomplish. Cleaning up the Larkspur Landing site, which we're getting close. Retaining real estate consultant to help us with property disposition, which we just did. And those kind of things that are a little outside the box of the normal sanitary district. So there's a lot in here. I didn't want to get too specific in my overview and encourage discussion about what's in here and any comments or thoughts. And with that, Mary, hand it back to you.
You're muted, Mary.
I had to do it at least once. Any comments on this, board members?
Well, I think it's a great business plan. I like very much what you've done. I really would like to see, I think Central Marin has a summary of last year's business plan, and the results, and a lot of them are ongoing, like Larkspur Landing coming along, but then we get to see what happened on the business plan. Is there a push for annexing now San Quentin?
Yes, we met with the LAFCO just before COVID struck, but we affirmed that that's a feasible project. There are some items that are in the county's court. They need to update their agreement with the prison, the Department of Corrections. They need to update their agreement with Caltrans on their courtyard. But when we talked about the substance of those updates, they were fairly nominal. It's just a matter of getting, someone to return the email, a little more than that. But it wasn't that daunting when you looked at the substance of what they need to do. It's a question if they get a response. So the ball's in their court. They want to unload the institutional obligation to do sewers. And so, we're waiting to hear back from them at this point. Felicia, I don't know if you've heard anything.
Well, the big advantage at Murray Park when we were talking to them was that they're, we can't do a Prop 218 notice. We're not going to do one for a small little agency, so they get to grandfather in at their current rates until we do the next rate review. And that was a big advantage, and so if we wait a long time, San Quentin loses that advantage. Anyway, they would get the same thing. We wouldn't do it 218.
Yeah, on your, well, I do want to give Felicia a chance to weigh in if you had anything to comment about.
Thank you, Steve. I would just say that as Murray Park, the district, as in the Murray Park process, the district will rely heavily on the coordination by LAFCO, because LAFCO really is the hub of the spokes, of the multiple spokes of this wheel, as I think Steve was alluding to. There's the county of Marin, who is very interested in sort of shedding the, getting out of the sewer business. But there are other entities involved, not just the prison, but Caltrans, and I feel like there's one other entity that I'm forgetting. So the LAFCO, as the sort of promulgating piece of the puzzle, is something that the district's going to rely heavily on. So that's all I would just add to that.
Can I make a point here?
I wanted to respond to Tom's other question also, but is this regarding San Quentin?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Yes, I have a San Quentin and I have a point about the Murray Park. We got money from the county for 5 years out of their 5-year plan, did we not, from the county for Murray Park? Isn't that right?
We got a reserve fund, and we got their property taxes and their service charges, but they did have a reserve fund, and I think San Quentin does too.
Yeah, but we got the reserve fund.
I think San Quentin has one too.
Right. My question on San Quentin, Steve, is do you know what they own besides pipes? Do they own anything besides pipes?
There's a small pump station, small lift station.
There's a small pump station right on the water, just as you turn the corner on the left-hand side.
Right.
Correct? It's right on the ocean or on the bay. I was swimming there, by the way. Believe it or not, I was actually swimming there this weekend with my dog. I saw people swimming. I was like, this is ice. I'm like, no, it's perfect. And it was perfect. It was absolutely beautiful. Is that pump station in use?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, yeah, it's vital to get that whole San Quentin Village through to the prison, and then pump station 11 then pumps into CMSA.
Okay. How bad is that pump station in condition wise, do you know?
CMSA's taking it over as you know, under contract, and they have a pride of ownership. So I checked with Jason Dow before we agreed to an annexation process, being sensitive to the time they've spent managing that system.
Okay, but would that property become the property of Ross Valley Sanitary District?
It would become one of our assets, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You know, I think Jason added a new generator, and I think they did an upgrade with Newt Engineering, so we can find out exactly what happened.
I think we should put a patio on the roof and sell snacks.
No, we've got a whole Larkspur Landing property for the snack stand, if that's what we're gonna do.
Or rent wetsuits, Doug.
It's just, it has a beautiful view.
I've put a scrubber in.
The best pump station views in the country.
Yeah.
Concession stands are revenue generator.
For
I think
sanitary.
you got the attention of our finance manager, Doug, or Director Kelly.
All right, if there's no more discussion, and I don't think
one thing though, I did want to acknowledge something that Director Gaffney did say. You know, it would be nice to have a summary of what we accomplished. We actually do that in the business plan committee. And Julia, she's here. I want to give her credit for helping me in the committee notes. We actually have you'll notice in the business plan, it says status to date on the right-hand column, it's blank. We fill that in as part of, you know, as we go through the year. And so mid-year and then at the end, and we go through that as we sunset last year's business plan and then introduce this year's. That's the process we've used. So that is available. I actually could have attached it to the board item.
I think so.
Yeah, so I'll take that. And meanwhile, I will email that to all the board members as an action item.
Don't we utilize that as part of the GM review when we go through the past year?
Yeah, that's up to the board.
I think we have in the past.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah.
Mary, I'd like to make a motion.
Thank you.
I'd move that we adopt the fiscal year 2021 business plan.
Second.
Roll call, Julia, please.
Yes, thank you. Borstein,
Yes.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Megs,
Yes.
Scylla,
Yes.
unanimous vote, thank you.
Item number 17, consideration of adopting an administrative policy for employee leave and compensation under the Families First Coronavirus Response Act and an employee telecommuting policy. Felicia.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be happy to take this one. So the Families First Coronavirus Response Act was enacted by Congress back in March, and it provides 2 new emergency leave requirements in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. One is emergency paid sick leave, which entitles employees to take up to an additional 2 weeks of paid sick leave, and an emergency paid family and medical leave, which is basically an augmentation of an existing federal law, FMLA, which permits employees to take up to 12 weeks of expanded family and medical leave for specific reasons under COVID-19. So the district, of course, also enacted a state of emergency back in March as a result of responding to the pandemic environment, district management authorized telecommuting, a new telecommuting policy for district staff to reduce the number of staff that were reporting to the offices every day. So what you're seeing here today are these this one policy that was drafted kind of as an emergency for telecommuting when the district didn't have such a policy in place. Staff's recommending that it be adopted as part of the district's standard personnel policies. We find that there's a lot of merit in having one of these in our standard policies. And then the EFMLA and EPSL policy, which is basically just conformance with the federal laws that are in effect through the COVID pandemic, which actually, you know, these laws, the EFMLA and the EPSL expanded paid sick leave and expanded family medical leave are only in effect until the end of the calendar year per the Congressional Act, but they may be extended as well. So again, two new policies for the board's consideration of adoption. One, you know, federally mandated, and the other specific to the district, but recommended to be part of our suite of policies. And that concludes my report. Oh, I will add that this policy was reviewed by the HR committee. There was a question at the HR committee about how many of the district's employees are using the telecommuting opportunity, and I've since counted, and the actual number is 6. And so it's a hybrid telecommuting environment where employees are working from the office part-time and working from home part-time. And the nice thing about this policy, which LCW actually drafted, is that there's a lot of management discretion that goes along with the telecommuting. So I think it's very nicely written, and it's been working for us so far. So again, that concludes my report, and happy to answer any questions.
Thanks. I want to point out that this, we're going to do a general personnel policy update. You might have mentioned that later this year. So this was, we thought we would do this first and then do the other overall update maybe around November or December.
Yes, thank you for adding that, Steve. Very helpful.
Yes, Doug.
Thank you. I just want to point out, the Human Resources Subcommittee did review this. The first part of this, the administrative policy for employee leave and compensation under the Family First Coronavirus Response Act, is us merely complying with the law. It seems like decent policy to me. It's pretty non-controversial. The second part, the work at home, I fully support, and I'd point out that Felicia said off the top of her head she didn't know exactly how many people were telecommuting right now. She said, I think between 6 and 8. So you hit the nail on the head there.
Yes, Tom.
Okay, so on page 149 of 184, and it's down in C, the district has designated the following job classifications as emergency responders. And so this means that these employees are exempt from emergency family and medical leave. In other words, they don't get it?
Well, yeah, that gives, the policy is written in such a way that the district could feasibly deny a request for leave. And under the provisions of the federal law, which exempt emergency responders. So I will say that these specific classifications are called out to address the operational needs of the district. So should the district be in a situation where we were down to a very limited number of staff, and somebody requested emergency family medical leave, the district would be in a position to legally deny that request.
So it's a permissive, the district may elect. It isn't necessary.
That's right.
Yeah, okay.
No.
what's the additional cost of this? Is it an additional 10 days of leave that we have to pay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. It's an additional 10 days of leave up to a maximum of $2,000 for child care related leave and up to a maximum of $10,000 for specific medical and health related leaves.
Okay.
All right, anything else on this?
No.
May I have a motion?
Sure. I move that we adopt an administrative policy for employee leave and compensation under the Family's First Coronavirus Response Act, FFCRA, and an employee telecommunicating policy.
I would second that.
Thank you. Julia, roll call?
Yes, Borstein,
Yes.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Meggs,
Yes.
Phila,
Yes.
unanimous vote. Thank you.
All right, now we get to go to item 19. Review and determine the need to continue the emergency action adopted in Resolution 2015-86 for 31 Ellsworth Easement Pipeline Slide Repair in Oak Manor.
Yep, still need to continue the emergency. We've confirmed we're doing USA next week. We're underground utilities, and then we're commencing construction on September 1st.
Great. Any comments on continuing an emergency? Great. Then I'll entertain a motion.
I so move to determine a need to continue the emergency action adopted in resolution number 20-1586 for 31 Ellsworth Easement Pipeline Slide Repair in Oak Manor.
Michael seconds with the peace sign. Thank you. Julia, roll call, please.
Yes, thank you. Borstein,
Yes.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Meggs,
Yes.
Phila,
Yes.
unanimous vote. Thank you.
Now, technically, we're returning to 4 and 5, or no, 5 and 6 rather.
You want to talk about the metrics report first?
Yeah, metrics.
Sure. The metrics report. One small spill for Stephen.
Right. Wipes caused.
Wipes, there's only a couple parcels on it. There's a sag. It's been scheduled to be replaced, and we have everything set up with the repair crew supervisor. I would like to highlight the recycled water use. General manager was very helpful in getting that up and running in the beginning throughout the process with ERG. And we had a couple hiccups here and there, but with his help, we got a lot of recycled water on the ground, and I'm real happy with that.
That's fabulous. Well, I was looking at the RVSD flows to CMSA. And Steve, is this what is reflecting in our I&I reduction? Because before we were up into 54% sometimes. And if I look at our flow, we range from 44 to 50% of CMSA flow. Is that what we're saying is the information about I&I reduction? Is it this?
So
Yes.
these are numbers, sorry.
Go ahead, Nick.
They're the numbers that come straight from CMSA. As multiple lift stations in our pump stations now have SCADA, we'll have our own numbers, but these numbers are given straight from CMSA.
Okay.
Yeah, and we look at historically where instead of down around 44% in dry weather, it's more like 50% if you go back 10 years.
Mm-hmm. A while, yeah.
So there's
over 50.
Yeah, this is that evidence of our pace of I&I control is higher than our joint power agencies.
Correct.
It's a friendly competition.
Well, it's dollars. It's money. You know, that additional 6% cost of CMSA That really adds up.
Yeah, that'll affect our bill to CMSA. By the way, we talked about a spill. Doug, did you notice the addresses on the insurance claims? It was in the in the check register or somewhere in there. That was a request of yours, Doug, and we've listed all the insurance payments, you know, for the entire year, I think.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Tom. Doug did have actually a couple of requests that were included in the year-end financials. And so it's worth just mentioning quickly on item 10C that you, I'm sorry?
Page 43 has the insurance claims.
That's it.
Right, page 43 has the insurance claim, and page 30 has the credit rating that you had asked about in the past, Doug.
Yep.
You know, when we bring back the compensation of the board, I sent Felicia a summary of what the board compensation was. And I kind of copied what Marin Municipal did. And I would like to have that included in the discussion.
Okay. Survey of other entities' policies. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're not asking for health insurance. Doug, are you frozen or are you putting your hand up? You're frozen. Okay. All right. Any other comments on the metrics? Then I'm just going to say that we recognize Bruce Corlett and Kevin Shine for their many years of service to the district.
I will make sure they know.
Thank you. And if they want to see it recorded,
I will take care of it.
Julia can show them the other meeting.
I mean, I think 34 years for Kevin Shine. I wonder if there's ever been an employee that worked that long at RVSD.
Not that I know.
Yeah, awesome.
Not even close.
Yeah, that's great.
That's great. It's good for the district. It shows morale is good and turnover is low. Although he's been here through all the morale. Yes. Doug, are you raising your hand? Doug? Now we can't hear you, even though it looks like you're unmuted. Doug?
I look forward to telling stories about Kevin Shine, not at this board meeting.
Okay.
They're good. They're good stories.
All right.
I've been trying to rescue a dog from a sewer manhole about 20 years ago and saved the dog's life, but we didn't have. No, he's
That's a good one for the board meeting. That's a good story for the board meeting.
That's great. We save dogs. All right. Thank you. If there's nothing more, I'll adjourn us. Okay. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks, board.
Thanks,
Appreciate
everyone.
it. Long agenda. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
See you later.